Hey guys, Joe here with Local Pro Helper, and in this video I'm going to be discussing pricing. So there's always, I'm on different forums and the question always goes up, how much would you charge? And the problem with that is a few things. The first is, like everyone always says, is you have to know your numbers and this and that. While yes, that is correct, you still have to have a guide of what to charge because I was just having this discussion with someone. What I was able to charge 3 years ago when I was physically doing all the work where I was installing, answering the phone calls, emails, and everything else, well, I only had to charge, just say $3,000 for a job. And now today for that same exact job, because I'm no longer answering the phone calls, the emails, I'm not doing anything like that, really doing anything in general, well, it's no longer a $3,000 job. For me, it might be $4,500 or even $5,000. Now, it doesn't mean it's either right or wrong, but the one thing you do have to look at is you do have to look at what the market is willing to bear. So what I mean by that is, in this example that came up, he was charging somewhere around $1,800. And I asked, well, what are the other companies charging? And he wasn't quite sure. And what happens is, if you're charging $1,800, which is fine, you're paying your bills or whatever, but if the other companies in your area, especially the ones that have been around forever, what happens if they're charging like $3,500, where you're almost like half the price? Well, what happens a lot of times is typically when you're charging less than everyone else, there's two things probably playing. The first thing is you don't feel as though you're worth that much. And two, if you come from a poor background, where your family was always struggling for money and this and that, well, what ends up happening is subconsciously, and maybe not subconsciously, is that when you start charging more, you feel like if you're okay with making $1,800 for that job, you don't want to charge, that $3,500 because you feel as though you're taking advantage of that customer. Because they're giving you their hard-earned money and they're paying for you for that service. And, while you could have made 18, now it's 3,500, right? But you have to look at it a few ways. So if you're continuing to pay $1,800 but you're just starting your business and eventually you're going to have people installing for you or answering the phone calls and everything else, one, you can't stay at the $1,800 price range because it's just never going to happen. Like, you can't sustain a business on it. The other thing that you look at is the more you charge, the more you can actually give back. So that includes hiring other people. Because when you charge less money than everyone else, well, you can't afford the advertising, you can't afford the person to answer the phone calls, the emails, you can't afford people to install for you, anything else. So what ends up happening is because you're charging less, well, you're only able to make enough money for yourself, right? But if you're but when you start charging that more money so that way you can afford the other people, well, yes, you are charging that customer more. But if you look at the value, you're not only providing a fence or whatever service you provide for that person, but you're also able to employ, the people that are answering the phone calls, the people installing and everything else. So you have a greater impact of those around you just because you're charging more. In my instance, like I said, I used to answer the phone calls, emails, do everything, and I only had one helper. And back then, just say it was $3,000. Well, I'm providing the fence for the customer, so that's one person. I'm providing income for my family, so that's me. And then I'm providing an income for my helper, so that's 3 people, right? But now because I charge more and I'm able to advertise and all this other kind of stuff, well, I'm taking care of myself and my family. I'm taking care of the customer. I'm taking care of the person that's answering the phone calls. I'm taking care of the person that is handling the scheduling. I'm taking care of the people that are installing, which now I have the subs and everything else, but it's the main guy. It's also his, for the main owner of the sub crew. It's the foreman of the sub crew, and it's the 2 helpers of the sub crew. So because I charge more, well, instead of only helping 2 people, now I'm helping like 8 and 9 people. So it's just a different way to think of things. And then the other thing is, when you're charging less than everyone else, well, you think you're giving people a good deal, but the people that you're trying to attract, which are the people that have more money, more disposable income, and that are easier to deal with, Well, they're not going to pay the $1,800. They'd rather pay the $3,500. So if anything, you're doing a disservice to them if you are charging less. So it's just a mindset thing. I will be posting videos that goes further into the mindset, because I really feel as though that's what people are severely lacking, or not lacking. They just don't understand the power of a mindset. Because again, if you come from a poor background, it affects everything. You think charging more is basically stealing from the customer, when that's simply not true. Because the other thing you look at is when you're charging less, well, do you have the time to answer the phone when they actually want you to answer the phone? Or do you have to constantly call them back when you're driving to the next estimate, or driving to pick up materials at Lowe's, Home Depot, or whatever you do? Well, they want that value, but that value takes money. It's like everything else in life. You have to give first in order to receive. It's no different than when people are buying from us. They have to give us money first, typically, so that way they can get the service in return. Now, obviously, there's typically deposits and final payments and all that kind of stuff, but the principle is still the same. They have to give in order to receive. They want someone to be able to answer the phone, compared to just answering whenever they can. Well, that's going to cost you more money. If you want a company that actually does what they say they're going to do and actually show up when they're supposed to, well, that takes more money as well, because that's more of a value service. Because like anything else, with you're hiring just two guys in the back of a pickup truck, well, you're not going to get that customer service. You're not going to get installed when you're supposed to, especially when they start getting busy, because you know how it goes when you first start out. Like, you literally just start promising anything to book that job. So again, if you want to provide everything that your customer wants, then you're going to have to charge more for it. And that also means that you are going to get away from the clientele that you're currently working with to get to the clientele that you want to work with, because they have more money, more disposable income. They're actually easier to deal with. They're less of a pain in the ass. Like, it's just this whole thing. But at the end of the day, you are providing more value, because you're giving them what they want, and they're going to give you what you want in return, which is that money, the reviews, being nice, and all that kind of good stuff. So I hope that helps. We're going into a different shift. It's just because I'm running out of things to talk about. So I'm just gonna, once I think of something, I'm gonna go down a rabbit hole and, keep on going and going and going. So if you enjoy this, just hit the like button, subscribe, and you're gonna see more stuff like this. And there's gonna be a playlist that I set up that's specifically for the mindset that we're talking about, how to charge and everything else. And before I go any further, the way to figure out what everyone else charges is very simple. You just call around and ask. In the fence industry, it's easy. You could just call and say, hey, I got a quote from another company. I have the measurements and everything else. Can you give me a rough idea what something like this would cost before you end up coming out? More than times than not, they're going to be able to do that for you. And I would highly suggest calling the companies that have been around in business the longest and have the most amount of staff going on, because they're not going to be able to charge the way that two guys in a pickup truck can charge. Because you also got to remember, the guys in the pickup truck probably don't have workman's comp and all that kind of stuff. So what happens if your guys get hurt on the job? Like, are you going to support them financially, or would you like your insurance to take care of it? But again, you can't afford the insurance unless you're charging more. So anyway, I hope that's the end of the rants. But anyway, if you like this kind of stuff, look at that. And there is playlists that are set up now. So there's stuff for like Google Ads if you're interested in that. There's stuff that's going to be for mindset, morning routines, like that kind of stuff. And if there's anything that you want to learn about or having a question about, just put it right in the comments, and then I can make a video about it. Because again, like, my goal is to produce about 4 to 5 videos a week. And I need ideas for it. So unless you feel like hearing the same shit over and over, just let me know what you want to hear about. All right, have a great day. Thanks.